JT Westercell, this is the part of the show where you're allowed to be insufferable. Utah was one quarterback away from winning the Big 12 championship in 2024. Yes or no?
Oh, you're the best. I do think they would have fallen just short, even if Cam had stayed healthy. But I say fallen short as in I think they would have been right there and it come down to the wire. I want to take everyone back to before the season started, why Utah was picked, not just by me, as a lot of people seem to think I was the only one who was trying to campaign them sometimes. Almost everyone. And Drake, did you pick? I think you went with Kansas, but you had Utah at least in the championship game, right, my friend?
I had Utah, who went 5-7 in the championship against Kansas, who went 5-7. Yeah,
exactly. So it's also your fault too. But Spencer is McLaughlin. He picked Utah to make it.
Utah and Kansas, by the way.
Oh yeah,
and Joel Klatt, Utah and Kansas.
College Game Day, that graphic when it was all Utah and when they were making their preseason predictions of who was going to win the conference. Why was that? Because this roster looked really good on paper. And it wasn't just that. It was the schedule too. I mean, how many of the games too, I will say, like if you want to make the argument that Utah would have won, I could easily make that argument that Utah would have been Big 12 champs, especially when you look at all of their games they played. They lost their 7 of their last 8. So it's like, how could you say that? But the most important position on the field is quarterback. And almost all those games, the biggest reason they lost it was because of poor quarterback play. So if Cam Rising's in there, you're not going to get poor quarterback play, at least the healthy Cam Rising, not the one we saw against Arizona State. And all of them were a game in the fourth quarter. Even the games where you're like Arizona, the game, that was 23-10. Utah had several chances to make that a game. The Colorado game ended up being a blowout, but Utah was right there in that one too. Gosh, Utah with even bad quarterback play nearly beat BYU at home, right? So that's where the schedule was also in theory lining up for them. When we thought that Arizona was going to be really good, when BYU ends up being your rival at home, Iowa State being really good, you get them at home. That's where at the time when a Utah team that really hadn't lost at home multiple times in a season since like 2017, I think it was, until this last year. So the defense pretty much lived up to their end of the bargain. They had a couple lapses, but if Utah would have just averaged that 38 points per game that they averaged the last time Cam Rising was healthy, they only would have lost to Colorado. So I think it's pretty easy. I said at the start of this, though, I think they would have fallen a little bit short. Look, ASU just seemed like a team of destiny this year. Cam Scadaboo, Sam Levitt, what they were able to do, Kenny Dillingham. I think Utah would have had a chance to win that game at Arizona State. Maybe they wouldn't have, but I don't know. I just feel like it was Arizona State's year. I really do. As high as I was on Utah, I feel like it was ASU's year.
I don't know, JT. Again, I want to push back a bit here on you. That when that game was played, it didn't feel like to me Arizona State was in their stride. We didn't know what we were going to get out of Arizona State at that time. I do believe you take that game itself into context, Utah's got a really good shot to win it. If not only they have a quarterback, but if Cam Rising is who we were promised and who we saw in 2022. Like what's wild to me is I don't want this to be Utah would have won the Big 12 with a healthy Cam Rising. Utah would have won the Big 12. They're one quarterback away. And it might not have been Rising who could have been that guy for the Utes. Did you think in the sample size that you saw that Cam Rising was 2022 level, or was like could he have been the catalyst to a Big 12 title, or would it have had to have been a somebody else, another competent quarterback somewhere out there?
I mean, if Cam could have stayed healthy, I think he would have rounded into form. But I will agree that looking back on even his first few games, I thought he looked like a quarterback who was still shaking off rust, which is understandable because the stat I love to throw around before I came on your show in the past, Drake, was the whole Tom Brady thing. That Tom Brady had played a game more recently until Cam did. But even when he got hurt in the Baylor game, he still missed a throw or two. The offense was stalling a little bit. So I think he would have eventually rounded into form of a guy who could have helped Utah contend for a Big 12 championship. But obviously we saw him against Arizona State. He got hurt the third play of the game and was never himself. The reason I'll go back to why I think Utah would have fallen short even if Cam was healthy, if we're going to do the what if game, we could also easily do what if Sam Levitt doesn't get hurt in that game. He missed a large chunk of time against Utah in that game. So if he stays healthy, then their foot has to stay on the gas pedal even more, because then you're going touchdown for touchdown maybe. If Utah's offense is firing more, I think it would have been hard for Utah to win there. I would, with a healthy Cam Rising, I'm saying that the 1 point difference does swing against BYU. They win there. Coming into the year, I always thought Colorado was a bad matchup for Utah. I think they would have still probably lost that game, even though that was a winnable game. Shedeur, that passing offense against a pretty good Utah secondary, but still having trouble against one of the best offenses in college football, unless you're playing BYU, obviously, in the Alamo Bowl, because I still can't believe what the Cougars did to them there. I think Utah would have had 2 losses, and I think maybe it would have been some of those, and still gotten in the conference championship game, but that's where I give ASU the edge. Utah could have been right there. Cam Rising could have been the guy if he got healthy to make this team a contender again. If they'd gotten 22 Rising, very well could have won the conference. like I said, I'm still going to lean with them falling just short because also it is Utah football, Drake. And unfortunately, as we know, even if Cam could have somehow been healthy, there were several other guys that were going to be hurt.
Can I go back and just dig up some bones here with you?
Sure. Let's do it.
When that Arizona game happened, because you win at Oklahoma State, you prove that, okay, maybe Isaac Wilson could be the guy against Utah State, and then you win against Oklahoma State on the road.
Yeah, we can play Big 12 football. That was a big thing. Like people were talking about the softness of the Pac-12. I never bought into that narrative, and I think a lot of people watched Utah didn't, but that was a big thing too. So that was such a big win for Utah.
Yeah, and that was top 15. We still thought Oklahoma State, who was undefeated, we thought this was the matchup of the Big 12. This is going to determine who goes to Arlington and represents the conference in the college football playoff. Obviously, that goes really south for both of the schools. What was it like? Like, take me back into the moment in the war room during that Arizona game when they stretched the lead to double digits and you realize Utah's going to lose.
So just disheartening. I mean, you feel like, and I will say there was a chance where you're like, okay, just Isaac Wilson is clearly not ready. Cam Rising will be back soon, and then hopefully you can rebound there. But I mean, even that game, just pulling back up the numbers, Isaac was 20 for 40. He had 280 yards. But I remember Utah came up short on a lot of the money downs, 2 interceptions. One of those put Arizona in prime position too. And that was a really deflating game because Utah hadn't lost to an unranked team at home since maybe even further back than 2017. I can't remember when that was too. So that was where it's like, whoa, what's going on here? You follow that up with you get him back against Arizona State, but then it goes even worse than there. And then come to find out at the end of the season too, like at the time it was like, well, Isaac Wilson balled out on the road against the top 15 team. But then we learned what Oklahoma State was. They had one of the worst defenses in college football. So it really was just kind of a false performance from what this Utah football team would end up being. Man, I thought this Utah team after that Oklahoma State game was on their way to probably just lose one game in conference action and then go on to win the Big 12. But injuries played a massive role, the biggest one being quarterback. And it is amazing how different the tone is, even for myself, talking about this Utah football program rather than last year when I felt like they were coming to the Big 12 with a lot of returners, a lot of optimism. And that has changed, even though there are a few reasons for excitement entering 25.
Coming up, BYU illegally stealing Utah players? Question mark. This is a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Utes crossover. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go to get my tickets. Coming up under the Big Sky Festival in Whitefish, Montana. How do I find cheap tickets? Game Time. And how do I find tickets to attending the 12-team college football playoff game? Game Time. Atlanta is like 4 hours from me. I live in Savannah, Georgia. I can just go watch it. I want cheap tickets. Game Time's the place to go. And with the new feature, Game Time Picks, it makes tickets for events even easier to get in your hands. Filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats. Recently, used Game Time Picks to find tickets for that national championship game. And boy, are they actually really reasonable. I love that I can see the seats before I buy them as well. The app shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, and that is a guarantee with Game Time.